welcome to the Elements of Whiskey, our weekly whiskey podcast. And normally we host this podcast in Dutch, but today we're doing it in English again. And we're doing it quite differently this time because we've been talking about this brand in Dutch, and we were completely blown away by what we found at the first 3 bottles that were released. So we decided to get somebody over here to talk about it in more depth. And if we're going to deep dive into a brand, what better way to do it than with a core range? So we are going to dive into the Turntable core range, and particularly the Bittersweet Symphony. And who better to guide us through this new amazing expression than Ellie? Ellie, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Before we dive into Turntable, I just wanted to briefly get to know you a bit more. Like, who are you?
Hey, who am I? So I'm Ali. I guess my Scotch whisky background is I've worked in the industry for sort of 10 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
I joined the industry with Ben Riach Distillery, so that was Ben Riach, Glendronach, Glenglassaugh. Worked there for a while, and that company was sold to Brown-Forman in 2015. So I stayed on for a year or so, and then one of the previous owners from Ben Riach, a guy called Billy Walker, he was pulling together a team to acquire a distillery from Pernod Ricard, Glenallachie Distillery, and start a new journey there. So I moved with Billy over to Glenallachie for a few years as well, and that was an amazing opportunity to sort of be part of launching a new brand from the beginning, but a brand that had stock going back to the 70s and like phenomenal range that we could really take in any direction that we wanted to go. So I worked there for a while, but always had a desire to do my own project and to work with my brother Gordon. He's also worked in Scotch whisky for just over 10 years, but we'd never had the opportunity to work together before. So that was kind of an attraction there as well. And yeah, the whole idea for Turntable was a few kind of years work in progress. But it's amazing to finally get that over the line and get started. But I guess that's kind of the professional side of things. And in the background, I love music, love football. Yeah, just I don't really know. Pretty simple guy, really.
the love for music definitely shines through. But I'm wondering, just before we dive into Turntable, like you mentioned, you've been asked by Billy Walker, who isn't a unknown guy, to say the least. Do you feel like he has learned you how to blend whiskeys, or is it something a skill that you acquired in a different part of your journey?
Oh no, for sure. I've been very fortunate to work as closely with Billy for the best part of a decade, and I would say you really learn by doing when you work with Billy. And even in fairness, now that we've started Turntable on our own project, he's still really enthusiastic about that, really happy to lend some support or taste some whiskies when we want and things. So we have a good relationship, and I'm hugely grateful to all the all the knowledge and experience he's sort of provided. Yeah.
Oh, and the funny thing is, what I quite find interesting is if we take a look at all the recipes, and we'll dive into that a bit more later, I haven't noticed any Glenallichies in them. Is that by any coincidence? Are we waiting for a special moment, or is it just it didn't happen yet?
I'd love to have some Glenallachie in there as well, but the truth is, Glenallachie, even for us, haven't been trading stock or casks on the market since the ownership changed, since Billy and the team took ownership. They don't really look to trade or to sell to independent bottlers or anything. So it's not to say you never find Glenallachie single casks or independent bottlers, but most of the time you do, it would be from people who owned the stock before that sale took place. So we didn't start buying casks until 2019, 2020. So no Glenallachie in our portfolio. I'll maybe give Billy a nudge on it, but I think I know what the answer will be, unfortunately.
I'm looking forward to the results. Just wondering, you say, like, okay, you've been working in whiskey for like a decade, and your brother has been working in the whiskey industry for almost a decade. How is it to now finally work together? Is it peace and quiet sailing, or is it sometimes more interesting dynamics.
Eh, no, it's been really good. I mean, I always actually when we were starting, you had um, a little fear or a little caution with it,
Yeah.
just because we are really close brothers as well, and we never work together, and you wonder if you need to be careful with that if it can cause some problems. But
Hmm.
it's been really good. I think the main thing is that we trust each other. So it's not to say everything always goes to plan, but when it doesn't go to plan, you know that every decision we're making is with the best of intentions, and you try to find solutions. So I think as long as you really trust each other, then things can work better. But we're quite different as well. We're quite good for each other in a way, in that Gordon is quite measured,
Hmm.
takes his time on decisions and really thinks everything through. Whereas
Hmm.
I would say I'm probably more the get stuff done and really accelerate
Yeah.
the process. But
All
sometimes it's
right.
good that he can rein me in a little and think about the finer details. And sometimes it's good I can give him a little bit of a push to let's get this done, kind of thing. So yeah, it works pretty well.
All right. And when did it all start? Like, how did you guys came up with the idea of Turntable?
Um, so we both, like as I said, we've both been working with some really good single malt brands for quite a long time. And I mean, Gordon's experience, he was at Inverhouse for 9 years, and then he was Douglas Lang as well. So he worked with like Bal Blair, well, Do, Old Pulteney, Speyburn, so some really nice brands. But we always kind of had this shared frustration when we travel the whiskey world, that um, there's this perception that single malt is the quality and blends are the volume.
Yeah.
It never really sat very well with us. We always wanted to do something to try and change that in some way and show how exciting blending could be. So I don't know, we almost had this idea that if you think about blending, when it started with the best of intentions. It was all about flavour development, quality, consistency, and it really drove the success of the Scotch whisky industry.
Yeah.
And yeah, possibly to such an extent that the demand started to outweigh the supply, and the strategy sort of changed slightly. Maybe sometimes younger whiskies would be used, higher proportion of grain whiskies, refill casks again and again, and the sort of quality changed to some extent. And
Hmm.
then we also kind of thought there's been this amazing growth in single malt category over the last 20 or 30 years, and try to think what's really behind that. And of course, it's quality driven. There's amazing, amazing whiskies out there, but we also had this feeling that the people today really want to feel a connection to the brands. They want to feel connected to the whiskies, what they're drinking. So they want to know where it's coming from, who's making it, what's the history, what cask has it been matured in. They really want to feel that connection.
Yeah.
So we almost thought, could we create like a small batch blending house, taking the best of both in some ways? Could we take the opportunity for flavor development and innovation from blending, but combine that with care to detail, transparency, connection that you find in the world of single malt to create something different? And effectively, the idea with Turntable was to turn the tables, flip the record on ordinary, do something different, and change the perception of blended whiskey to some degree. So yeah, and then obviously there's that music connection in there that we both.
Yes.
I mean, we both love music, and we love exploring the connection between whiskey and music. Just these sort of two parts of life that can take somebody to a completely different place,
Different
different
place. Yeah.
time. Yeah, exactly. So just trying to explore that. And obviously, when we put together some connections between songs and whiskies and things, it's like tasting notes. It's a totally personal thing. So we get kind of
Mhm.
interested as well, like what other people would be listening to when they're drinking our whiskies and things. So always like hearing feedback on that too.
Wondering. I'm grabbing a bottle here right now, and it also says on the back. It says, "Welcome to the Turntable Blending House." What is a blending house?
It's back to the traditional idea, I guess, of a blending house, in that we would be buying stock from many different suppliers, different distilleries around Scotland. I think today we probably own around 1,000 casks, but stock stock
Okay.
management, stock portfolio, wood management is absolutely key to what we do and allowing us to think ahead, make long-term plans. But so, as I said, we've been buying since 2019, 2020, and I would say a lot of the time that we would be buying anything from new make spirit all the way through to kind of 30 years old.
Okay.
And I'd say a lot of the time, the quality of the spirit is just about always outstanding. The quality of the casks can vary. Sometimes it's very good, sometimes it's a little disappointing, but a lot of the time we'd be running a pretty serious re-rack program and buying wood, like really good quality casks directly from the US or from Spain or from other parts of Europe, and re-racking a lot of the whiskey that we bought into that good quality wood. So the reason it took us so long to actually launch the brand was that we needed that time to get the whiskey to a point that we were really happy with the quality and happy to launch it. But that's one part of what we do. So getting the cask to stock, and then the actual blending side starts. So doing small batch blending, combining casks to try to bring a different flavor profile than what we could do just releasing as single cask bottling. So trying to be creative, trying to always be flavor focused, and blend to bring basically the best whiskey we possibly can to you. So we have this mantra as well, which is really no shortcuts. So everything we do is natural color, non-chill filter, 46%, really long marrying time. So just trying to take all the steps we possibly can to put quality at the front.
I find that it's a very amazing mantra to have. And you finally came to the market with 3 bottles: the Joy Discovery Invention, the Firestarter, and Purple Haze. I don't want to have it about the liquid. I just want to quickly ask you some questions about the names, because it has very, very heavy music influence, turntable, of course. But I just want to ask you, like, where does the name come from? Like Joy Discovery Invention.
So it's a good question. So I think a lot of people can make the connection between Purple Haze and Firestarter. Joy Discovery Invention, probably a little more niche. So it's a song by a band from Scotland called Biffy Clyro. So they were actually at school with Gordon and I, although a few years above. But it was the first band I ever went to see in 2003, I think. So still got the ticket and things, which was kind of cool. But it's the first song on their first ever album, and it just seemed really fitting for our first release. And that even the name, the words really tie into what we want to be about as a blending house, as a company, Joy, Discovery, Invention. So that was kind of where that one came from.
And we got Firestarter. I believe it's probably a nod to do the Prodigy. I don't imagine it's about Sawyer Hill, which we've been discussing briefly. But is it actually from the song from the Prodigy?
Yeah, that was the connection for this one. Was obviously the name Firestarter tying into the style of whiskey, the peated style and things, but also just the attitude of the Prodigy and kind of 2 fingers up to authority, do things differently, and it kind of met with what we're trying to do with Turntable, just try and look at things at it differently and change opinions. So that was the idea on that one.
And I know that you've pretty recently been to the Netherlands, and Purple Haze can go a different way. That's not musically, but we can't talk about that too long. But what is the music reference to Purple Haze?
Yeah, going with Jimi Hendrix on that one, I would say there's not as much story to this one, in honesty, other than big sherry matured style of whiskey that I think goes perfectly with Hendrix' sort of lazy guitar style playing music, and I just think that one's the perfect match. But again, that's totally personal. So other people pairing different whiskies with this song, we love to hear it.
Okay, so if you get some recommendations for a perfect song that goes with this very sherry forward flavored, let us know. These were the first 3 bottles you guys put out, but how was it for you as a person to launch your very own brand new whiskey brand?
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. It's like a bit of a roller coaster. You go through moments of sort of self-doubt and anxiety as you're getting there,
Mm-hmm.
but then joy. And I mean, the feedback we've received and the support we've received from so many people has been really amazing. So no, we're absolutely delighted. But I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Just a total roller coaster to the moment, and that roller coaster just continues going forward now. But even I remember the day we were bottling those whiskies for the first time, so our first ever bottling. I was in the north of Scotland, meeting with a retailer and account and possibly selling our whiskies in advance. And I felt the phone buzzing in my pocket, and it was just a message from the bottlers to say there's a problem. Didn't say what the problem was, but there's
Oh
a
God.
problem. So, oh
Oh
dear.
no.
And then Gordon, my brother, he was meant to be going to the bottling, and I phoned him when I came out the shop, and I said, "Well, what's happening? How's it going?" And he said, I don't know. I'm at the side of the motorway. I had a tyre blowout, so I've got a flat tyre at the side of the motorway." I was like, this must be like the worst sign ever for the first bottling, you just standing at the side of the motorway. But yeah, we had this issue with the glass. Just the labels were crinkling every time they were applied, and we had to replace the glass and things. But as I said, there's always
Something.
going to be road bumps. There's always going to be something. Just try and stay solution focused instead of problem focused, I guess. But yeah,
I find it. Yeah. To be honest, if you go through all that, you got something to be proud of, and I believe that the first batch of like limited editions are very something that you can be proud of. But
thank
the
you.
core range, that's something that I need to dive into with you. So
Sure.
let's find out if that's, yeah. If you set the bar of it very high with the first limited releases, so now let's see if you can top it off, like in the core range. The first one I want to talk about is the Paradise Funk. Can you tell me a bit more about like how it came to be and how you decided to blend these casks together?
Yeah, sure. In a way, the core range has been an evolution from the first set of limited editions as well. In that, I would say the Paradise Funk was slightly based on Joy Discovery Invention, the
Mm-hmm.
Bittersweet Symphony slightly based on Purple Haze, and then we had the peated style, the Smoking Riff, which is like it is a very different direction to Firestarter, but that is
Okay.
the peated side of our
Things.
range. And then in the future with limited editions, we plan to be a bit more or to go in different directions in the future as well and go into different styles. But so we had an idea of what styles of whiskey we wanted to create, and then I mean, in some way, I think through the years of working with Billy and the experience there, you start to have ideas about what distillates suit that style, what
Mm-hmm.
cask types suit that style, um, and how many years we've had in the right cask, what ages of whiskey we're using, and what flavors we expect. So going through those kind of stages, we can usually sort of narrow down our stock holding to, I don't know, maybe 50 casks for each release or so.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have an idea of what flavors we would expect from those casks, and would they would they kind of meet the style of whiskey that we're trying to produce. And then we would sample each of these casks individually. We would see if they kind of expect what our expectations were, and
Mm-hmm.
then we would get into the actual blending side, seeing how the different combinations work, seeing how they react when water is added as well.
Mm-hmm.
And at that, once we get to that stage, I would say it's almost a case of following the whiskey. So you can't predict exactly how whiskies will behave when they are blended and when water is added. So it's there is certainly some trial and error in there. And once you
Mm-hmm.
find a route that you're really happy with, we try to follow that route. But really, the idea behind the Paradise Funk was built around sort of Speyside malts, ex American oak, bourbon cask, virgin oak cask, chinkapin, and then older grain whiskies, building in some of those tropical fruit elements, ex-cognac casks as well, just to bring a different dimension. But that was the kind of idea, looking for those tropical fruit flavors, hints of pineapple, some orchard fruits, the sort of vanilla, caramel, quite light, but with enough depth and complexity to keep things really interesting. I mean, one of the things I really like about the Paradise Funk is, I think, for me, is probably the whiskey in the house. Like, I would reach to the most often if it's a, I don't know, Tuesday after work or something, and you think, I just really want a whiskey, and then I think it's just such a easygoing, enjoyable whiskey. But at the same time, you can sit there over a longer period, and the whiskey keeps evolving, keeps changing, and there is depth and complexity to it. So easygoing whiskey, but not simple. It's got a bit more to it than that. So yeah.
And I believe, if I got the recipe here in front, and I will do a quick
Please.
rundown of all the percentages in a second, but I feel like this is the most elaborate brand, or at least the blend with the most different whiskies in it. Is that true?
Yeah, that probably is true. Actually, I hadn't thought about that, but I think that will be true. Yeah. It's interesting, actually. I would say this is probably the one that I found most challenging in terms of meeting the style that you wanted to. The sort of bittersweet symphony with the sherry style, I felt like we could find what we were looking for quite well. And with the smoking riff as well, we really followed the whiskey on that one, and that we had the peated intention building on top of the fire starter at the start, but then we kind of found combining that peat with the sherry side of things really just worked so well, and we hit that point quite quickly. The Paradise Funk took quite a lot of time and fine tuning to try and get to a place we were happy with it. Yeah.
All right, if I take a look at the recipe, it's 13% Knockdo Virgin Oak Cask, 18% Invergordon ex-Cognac Cask, 8% Black Adol Bourbon Cask, 30% unnamed Speyside Virgin Oak Cask. Always so fun if there's an unnamed Speyside in it. 11% North British Virgin Oak, and 20% Ben Rinnes Chinquapin Oak. You mentioned like these tropical flavors, but are there some more tasting notes for the people who don't have a bottle at hand?
Yeah, for sure. I think on the tropical side, it probably is those hints of pineapple and a bit of coconut coming through from some of the virgin oak and things as well. But yeah, again, quite personal on that one. I think there's this kind of nice creme brulee sort of burnt caramel thing coming through as well with the vanillas. But yeah, I would say the hints of pineapple note come through for sure.
We have the smoking riff as the second one. It's a 21% Knockdo PX Pungent, 80% Colilla Bourbon Cask, 24% Craigellachie PX Pungent, 9% Colilla Red Wine Barrel, which I find very interesting in that one, and 28% North British Virgin Oak. How you mentioned, like, okay, you went from the fire starter and build outwards on it, but is it that simple to make such a good blend, or what are some things to keep in mind when putting something like a peated whiskey together?
For sure. I mean, I think for the peated whiskey, we had this feeling that in the industry, there's like, I love peated whiskey, I love Islay whiskey, but sometimes I feel like there's become this kind of competition as to who can get the highest ppm, who can make the most peated whiskey, and we had no interest in that at all. We just wanted to produce the best, most balanced that we possibly could, and blending comes in quite nicely there, in that we don't need to be 100% Islay peated or anything. So this one, 30% from Caolila, providing this sort of beautiful salty campfire smoke. But then we could really combine that with the other flavours, the sort of Knockdo PX and Craigellachie PX. So Craigellachie, especially, this sort of heavier style of malt that can sort of stand up to the Pedro Jimenez sherry cask and to that sort of heavy peated Caolila, that it still carries enough weight to really come through on top of that. So you're left with quite like a full-bodied, well-balanced whiskey that you definitely get that campfire smoke on the top, but on the second taste, and if you let it sit in the glass for a while with a little bit of air, those sherry notes really come through as well. Just that PX, those sort of raisins, chocolates, sort of sweeter notes combining with the smoke. So I think that was really our ambition on this one, to, when we're creating a peated whiskey, not to be overwhelming on the smoke side, and to have something that, you can, again, that kind of layers of complexity.
I feel like making a peated whiskey blend is the most difficult type of whiskey to make, or a smoky whiskey, in that sense that people expect these heavy Islay flavor things, but it can be more subtle and more complex than that. Is that something that you guys also got as feedback from people, where it's like, okay, it's called smoke and riff, but I feel it's like a very subtle smoke?
Yeah, on this one, I think it's possibly been the most popular of the core range since we launched, which I'm delighted at. But you definitely get the odd person who is like the huge Islay fan, Pete who are probably looking for a little more smoke experience. But I think in general, people are just looking for
an enjoyable dram.
Yeah, a really enjoyable, good quality whiskey. So I think this can attract the peated fans, people who love all types of whiskey, but occasionally this possibly could attract somebody into that category as well, and kind of open the world of peated whiskies to somebody who thought that maybe wasn't necessarily for them in the past. So I think this can capture the interest of quite a wide audience. Yeah.
And I've been wondering about the name, because I believe Paradise Funk is a song title.
It's not actually. So
no,
no worries. So on the limited editions, we always thought we'll go song titles, kind of pairings in some way. But on the core range, the intention was to stay away from that and be really flavor focused and combine with a style of music in some way. So the idea of Paradise Funk, even though Paradise isn't a flavor, we thought it would give the perception of those sort of tropical flavors and really kind of fresh, light, easy whiskey. But then the idea of the funk music was sort of unpredictable, ever changing, keeps moving, and that's how we felt about the whiskey. Okay. The idea with the smoke and riff was obviously smoking being the peated element, and then riff, like a guitar riff in some way, sort of providing structure to a song, and you sort of build around that. And that was almost the feeling with Smoke and Riff, in that we think the peated side gives this whiskey its structure, and then we build around that and build other elements on top of that. The one that you'll definitely challenge me on the name then is Bittersweet Symphony, because I think everybody will make the song connection on that one. But the truth is, it was almost in hesitation and in spite of the song, and that we just thought the name in terms of flavor description for that whiskey is just too perfect not to. The bittersweet with those sherry casks, and symphony in terms of sort of building something that is greater than this. Each of the individual parts, the sum of everything is greater than each of the individual parts. So, the name was just too perfect not to use, but obviously there is the song connection on that one.
I will dive into, you like mentioned, all the core ingredients that are really good on themselves, but working together into this bittersweet symphony. The ingredients itself are 22% Crocalicki PX Pungent, 17% Blair Atoll Virgin Oak, 21% Crocalicki Oloroso Sherry Cask, 21% Balmenach. How do I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah, Balmenach. Yeah.
Pedro Jimenez Pungent, and 19% British Virgin Oak. I'm having the bottle right here, and I'm gonna pour myself a glass. And I'm just wondering if you can guide me through a quick nosing and tasting of the bittersweet symphony. I'm very looking forward to it. Although the bottle isn't full, I haven't tried it yet, so it's going to be my first time trying it. So,
amazing! I'm delighted to share it with you. So this one, obviously, a development of Purple Haze in some ways, and really looking at the sherry cask and sherry matured style of whiskey. I mentioned on peated whiskey sometimes I thought it had become about the most smoky, the highest ppm. And I love sherry matured whiskey as well, but there are sometimes I think there's whiskies that are a little over sherried now, and that it can be quite thin spirits and very Pedro Jimenez driven, and most of what you're getting is just that sweet Pedro Jimenez. So we were
Okay.
quite aware of that when we produced this, that we needed a heavy, full-bodied style of spirit that could stand up to the sherry cask and could provide balance and keep everything in tune. So basically, with the Craig Ellicky and the Balmenach are both really good, heavy, oily styles of spirit that can stand up so well to these casks. And I think also having that combination between Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso provides something really interesting. In that the Pedro Jimenez, you definitely get the sweeter side of the flavors, but the Oloroso definitely it brings some of that slightly drier, slightly spicier. Um, just not all about the sweetness. So it's a really nice combination of flavors. So I mean, I think obviously in the name bittersweet, in some ways you almost get that like really pure dark chocolate, almost slightly bitter dark chocolate, some hints of like orange peel, a lot of the spice, the cinnamon, the nutmeg, and then with the Pedro Jimenez, some of the dried fruits, the raisins and dates, and sort of stickier flavors coming through. But really sort of heavy, oily, full-bodied style of whiskey that I think just suits sherry cask maturation perfectly.
I'm wondering, just as a quick check of all my check boxes, the color is very, very beautiful and very dark. You mentioned that the whiskeys are non-chill filtered and natural color. This one as
Yep.
well. So it's all
Yeah, of
natural
course.
color.
Yep. Everything we're doing natural color. So coming from the really good quality casks that we're
Mhm.
using. It's funny, we try to be as transparent as we possibly can on both our website and the labels and things on the bottle, giving the blend breakdowns. One of the pieces of information we're not really allowed to share on any printed marketing materials is the different ages of the
Yeah.
whiskies. So with the Scotch Whisky Association regulations, you're only allowed to say the age of the youngest whisky.
Yeah.
That can be a little frustrating for us in that we work
Yeah.
with such a wide range of whiskies and age statements in each of our blends. So I would say, like, typically on the core range that we've gone through now, I would say the malt whiskies in general are between 10 and 15 years old. And the grain
Okay.
whiskies are usually quite a bit older, usually sort of over 18 years and going all the way up to 28, 30. So a lot of the time in the world of blending, people would look at grain whiskies as sort of a volume filler, just
Hmm.
something light and easy to stretch out the volume. We only use grain whiskies when we think it can really bring an exciting different flavour element to the blend, and that's why we typically use much older grain whiskies. And again, so just on the actual split, in these obviously you've gone through the percentages and the breakdowns
Yeah.
of each, but I would say typically on the core range right now we're around 70% malt, 30% grain. That could change depending on limited releases and things in the future on what the desired flavor profile is. But I guess in some ways, just to say, we don't look at our grain whiskies as inferior in any way flavor wise to the malt whiskies. It's just
Hmm.
something completely different. But every time we're blending, we're only bringing in elements to try and add to the flavor, never stretch out the volume.
What I found very interesting in looking through all the breakdowns, basically whenever we see a grain whiskey introduced into the blend, it's mostly North British. Has that to do with availability, or is it more like a preference from you guys?
I would say it varied quite a lot on the limited editions, and then
Mhm.
for the core range, we've gone more so towards North British because we have a good supply and we can keep that up for future bottlings and things, and keep a little bit of consistency in
Okay.
the core range as well. The quality is really good, but I think quality can come from other grain distilleries as well. It's not an overwhelming preference, but in terms of trying to keep that element of consistency on a slightly longer term basis, our stock right now lends itself towards North British on the core range.
All right. And talking about core range before I give some additions to your tasting notes. Um, what I find very interesting is you now produced a core range, but you give basically the complete recipe. Whenever we see like in a year, 2 years time, this new batch of this core range, are you planning on using exactly the same recipe to but may vary a bit in flavor wise, or are you trying to keep the flavor the same but changing in percentages?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So even on the packaging, on the limited editions, on the label and the gift box, we'll give the full breakdown
Yeah.
percentages on the packaging. On the core
Mm-hmm.
range, we've not done that, but we give the information on our website. And basically, the reason it's not on the packaging is that we need that flexibility each time we bottle to be able to make adjustments and change the recipe slightly.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll keep the website updated, and that will change from bottling to bottling.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good question as well, though, in that I would say most blenders, when you think of blended Scotch whisky, their almost top priority would be consistency.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing accomplishment when you think about Chivas Regal and Johnny Walker and things enjoyed all over the world for a long, long period of time. And the consistency that you could find is really outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's not really who we are and our top ambition or our top priority. So we would always try, each time we bottle, each time we blend, we would try to produce the best whiskey we possibly can. Now, on the core range, obviously, there needs to be an element of consistency. So for the Paradise Funk, we will stay within that style. For the Bittersweet Symphony, we'll stay within the sherry style. For the Smoking Riff, we'll stay within the peated and slightly sweeter sherry cask combined style. But there will be slight intricacy, slight variation from batch to batch, and we almost find that quite interesting and enjoy that. And I would say that's a little bit the part of crossover as well between the world of single malt and the world of blends, and that we want to bring those categories closer together. But if I think about single malts, I think about my time working with Glenallachie and the flagship product, the 12 years old, for example.
Yeah.
When we launched that in 2017, 2018, the quality was great. Like, it's a fantastic product. And today, if I went back and bought a bottle of Glenallachie 12 years old, it would still be a really good product. But it's not the exact same. The whiskey has evolved, it's gone on a journey. And I think that's quite common across the world of single malt. I think that's from cask to cask, batch to batch, things do evolve. There's slight intricacy, slight differences in the flavour profile. And we're quite happy with that in our core range as well. So, as I said, consistency will play a part in what we do, but the bigger ambition will always be that the quality is the absolute best we can blend and bottle each time. So it's a slightly different approach to blending, I guess.
So basically, if I take your answer, it's more like if you like the Bittersweet Symphony, you will probably like the Bittersweet Symphony coming up in the next coming 5 to 10 years, but it will not be the same whiskey as it is right now.
Won't be exact. So there are times there are times that it will be very similar, but or most of the time I would hope it would be pretty similar, but it won't be exact.
Yeah, and just more as a fun nod, will I, as a common mortal human, be able to taste the differences if I just finish a bottle and open the next? Do you think that I will be able to try it, or if you will not compare them side by side, you will probably not even?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So I mean, I've literally just pulled together the blends for our next bottling of the core range and pulled together all the different casks and things. So I've done that. I would say there are differences, and you'll probably be able to tell the difference. But I think the quality is still there. We still stick to all our sort of values and mantras, and there's no shortcuts, and still very much quality focused. But I think you'd be able to tell subtle differences. Yeah.
Really, really cool. So I gotta at least not finish my bottle completely. I made a note of that one. Just as a quick little addition to your flavor and tasting notes, what I find very interesting is that yes, I feel all these sherry notes I totally get, but I also feel like this very subtle, as if you would be roasting a marshmallow above a campfire. This very nice earthy sweetness. But
Nice,
also, if you dip it into chocolate afterwards, it has this very
nice.
nice chocolatey note to it as well. And also, surprisingly, this I would almost call it like this grandmother's perfume draw. These more, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, slightly floral, slightly the different fruits coming through. But interesting in your comments on the slightly earthy style, and I
Mhm.
almost think that tasting note. I always think of kind of old dunnage warehouses, the kind of
Yeah, yeah.
stone walls, earthy floor, and I don't know. Sometimes it can give a little hint of that smoke, but it's not peat. So
No, 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 definitely.
something quite different. But that's a really good tasting note for sure.
Yeah, and it's. I feel like the perfume draw. I feel like it's more these old vintage perfumes, but more in
Nice.
this very dense, oily kind of way. So it's not this fresh floral spray on perfume, but it's more like this viscous, oily drops you rub upon your palms, and so it's more this. Yeah, it's a
Oh,
niche. I
that's
know.
awesome. We'll
It's a niche. I know.
I need to get you to write the notes on the next one. That's awesome. Nice one.
I want to talk about price points. You know the price points in pounds. I've checked them out briefly, like here in the Netherlands, what I can expect. The
Yep.
limited editions roughly run you 65 to 70 euros. The core range is 55 to 60 euros.
Yeah, I would say around €57 on the core range.
Okay.
Yeah, and the
How?
limiteds I think were probably 70, 75. Yeah.
Okay. But how? Like you mentioned, like it's the quality cost. Like, I see a lot of virgin oak. I see a lot of PX bungeons. You strive towards this quality. It's not 40%. It's 46%. Natural color, non-chill filtered, small batches. Like, how can you still make it for like 57 euros?
I think, I mean, the biggest thing for Gordon and I is that the whiskies are accessible, and that we honestly think what we're trying to do with Turntable and blended Scotch whisky is quite niche, and the biggest opportunity that we have to build the brand is people tasting our whiskies, because we really think the quality can do the talking, and
Mhm.
obviously explaining what we're doing and storytelling and stuff is really important as well. But we think a lot of brands, you can spend lots of money on the adverts and magazines and stuff like that. But I think the most important for us is to get people tasting the whiskies. So we really try to hit a price point that is not for sitting on a shelf, is not collecting, that is for opening, is for drinking, and more people can enjoy. And hopefully, if people are enjoying, they're spreading the word, and we can grow the brand. But Gordon and I are also whiskey geeks at our core as well, and we want to
Okay.
release something that is really good value. So I always think with our whiskies, anyone that buys a bottle and drinks it, I always want them to think that was money really well spent. That was
Okay.
good value for good quality whiskey. I think sometimes the prices in recent years have gone a bit crazy on some whiskies, so I always want people to think that was really good value for what we bought. Yeah.
Amazing. And you guys are a blending house. So blending is most like I feel like you try to turn the tables, flip the, like make people look at the industry a different way. I'm just wondering, like, how do you feel like the current blending industry is currently? Is it changing? Are there more people doing the same thing that you guys are doing? Of course, like the famous example, like of a compass box. But are there more brands coming up that are doing the same thing as you guys do, or is it
I
still a
I
niche?
still I still think the category we're operating in is quite niche, and that Compass Box do it for sure. And they've been doing it for 20 years or so, but nobody else
2000,
has
yeah.
really been operating in that space. And I think a lot of others will sort of come into it tentatively. So it will be like some of the bigger producers will have single malt brands and big blend brands might dip their toe into it, but we're kind of conscious that this is our full focus. We're not going to do any single cask, single malts. Our focus is purely on blended Scotch whisky and trying to change the perception of the category in some way. Part of what's been really interesting to me is like since we launched, I honestly thought we have so much work to do in changing that perception, and we do. We still have a long way to go, but I think when we do actually share our whiskies and talk about what we're doing, people really buy into the story. Like they're really curious. They're not being snobby about single malts having to be better than blends. They are being quite open-minded, which I thought that having that open-minded approach might be difficult. That might take some work, but I've been really pleasantly surprised by that. So it's and that's in sort of very mature whiskey markets as well, the Netherlands, Germany, France, UK, and things. People, I think, are just looking for quality, and they're looking for storytelling, connection. And I think as long as we can provide that connection, and people know that we're making the whiskies with passion and trying to put the quality first always, then they'll really appreciate it.
Really amazing. Can you give us a little tease about like some upcoming stuff you are working on, or is it all top secret? And do I need to shut up now?
No, it's a really cool one actually. When are we planning to air this episode? Sorry, when will this drop?
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, perfect. So I can tell you all about it. So we've got
cool. Okay.
Awesome release coming out. It'll be yesterday for you guys. So for us, It's on Tuesday coming. So we've it's the first time we'll do a blended whiskey that is not all Scotch whiskey. So we're going. The idea is to do a collaboration bottling once per year with a New World distillery, and try to do something really exciting. So we're so happy on this one that we'll work with Starward Distillery in Australia. So Melbourne Distillery, been going for 15 years, really awesome whiskey, cool guys, making some unbelievable stuff. But they they're known for Australian single malt whiskey and maturing in Australian red wine casks. So we wanted to keep that style, but blend it in a way that took it in a completely different direction. So we've combined that with a little peated whiskey, so it's 10% from, I think the Starward is making up about 40%, and then we have about 10% coming from Caolila, giving it a peated twist, some Inchgower sort of heavier style of whiskey, and then some old North British on the Virgin Oak. So again, you get like this one's been built around the Starward, and then you get these sweet Australian red wine casks, but combined with that smokiness, combined with some of that vanilla tropical nature from the older grain whiskies as well. But it's a project that we're so excited about, and it's been a lot of work to get to the point of actually blending cross borders. So I honestly can't wait for this one to release and to hear what you guys think of this one.
Yeah, I had the pleasure to try it with you, so I know what is coming into market, and it's very amazing. If you know Starward, for our Dutch audience, we did an episode about Starward, but also talking about like the combination. Like Starward is a very family-owned company where foods is central. So we also talked about the Starward red wine cask, whiskey combined with food. But if you want to get more information about that, you can check it out. But what I found very interesting is that it feels more like building with Lego. You got some amazing bricks to play with, but just putting them together makes it to something very unique, where you can still feel like, okay, but it's Starward. If you know it, if you have tried some different whiskeys from them, you will definitely recognize it, but then be surprised with all the added layers to it that you aren't used to from that distillery, especially the Isla peat and stuff. It's so funny and so interesting as a whiskey geek to explore. I can definitely highly recommend you guys to check out this very cool collaboration. You mentioned also it's like about the hemispheres. What was the idea behind it?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, even on the packaging, we've created this idea of northern hemispheres meeting the southern hemisphere. So it's almost created with the starward logo and imagery in some ways, and that you can see the stars, the night sky, the Milky Way and things, but you can see from both the northern hemisphere perspective and the southern hemisphere perspective, and the kind of meeting of those worlds. But so that's on the gift box, but even on the label's quite cool. We've used so you'll see it like the way it shows in daylight is from the northern hemisphere with the Turntable logo, but if you had that in a back bar or something in a dark room, there's glow-in-the-dark ink that shows it on the flip perspective, shows the stars from the opposite perspective with the starward logo. So it's kind of cool that the design agency have done a really awesome job on this one as well.
I'm such a sucker for glow-in-the-dark. It's such you guys did an amazing job with it. Thank you so much, Ellie. I feel like I want to explore like what you guys are putting out in the next coming years. So I will be definitely following you guys. If people want to follow you and know all the ins and outs of what you are doing, where can they go best?
So I would say on our socials on Instagram at Turntable Spirits, and the same on Facebook, probably best. LinkedIn. We plan to start a newsletter as well, but that's something we're working on. But I'd say if you get us on Instagram at Turntable Spirits, you'll be well updated and be able to sign up to everything in the future as well.
Perfect. And if you are in the Netherlands and you want to find some places that actually sell turntable, you can go to Craft Spirits _NL, which is the Dutch importer, and you can get all your information over there. Ellie, thank you so much. I'm gonna enjoy the last of my glass here, and I hope to see you soon and to talk about all the new things that are coming. Ellie, thank you so much, and for the people at home, see you next time. Cheers.
Amazing. Thanks so much, guys.